The important thing about today is I'm not trying to change anybody's mind about how they feel about sex and sexuality. All I want you to do as apprentice sociologists is think about sex and sexuality.
I'm John Goldring and I'm a sociology lecturer in the sociology department. Trying to engage students can be quite difficult, especially when you're teaching sensitive issues. So I do try and use new techniques which allow students to get involved in potentially embarrassing subjects. So one of the things I used this year in the lecture on making sense of society was called plickers. What students needed to do there was hold up a piece of paper in a certain direction, and that would give an answer then to a multiple choice question. Previous to that, I would ask people to put their hands up, but if you're asking sensitive questions, it's difficult. People may not want to put their hands up because they're too afraid to answer. In the past, I've used things like Socrative and I've used Kahoot, all really useful tools. Because I'm teaching everyday kind of subjects, such as gender, such as sex, sexuality, I think props really help because they bring home the everydayness of the subject I'm teaching. So, for example, one of the props I've got is an exit sign, which has got a man running towards an exit sign, as if that's what men do when an emergency happens. But women wouldn't do that, and it kind of tells students that there's something going on there. There's something cultural going on. The other one I have is to throw things. Iris Young has a really good journal on sex and gender, which is called Throwing Like a Girl. And rather than tell students about this journal article, what I like to do is get something for students to throw, and I'll get volunteers to come to the front, male and female, and I get them to throw things across the room. And it reveals itself that women, girls do throw differently, and it's how we're socially constructed. Now, if I just told them about it, it wouldn't be real. They wouldn't see for themselves that, there is gender differences in the way we're brought up, the way we even throw things. So yeah, I like to use props like that. I think it keeps things moving. If somebody talks for an hour, for 2 hours, I remember myself, it's very easy to just start drifting off, to start thinking about Hollyoaks, to start thinking what's for tea. I think if I keep changing things, so I'll talk for 10, 15 minutes, and then I'll introduce some kind of activity where students need to involve themselves. I think that kind of gets everyone back in the room, gets everyone back concentrating, for then when I start talking again. So I think things like a props, having students stand up, I don't know, perhaps it were a student, I'm going to ask me, I don't want him to ask me. I wouldn't force anyone, but perhaps that wakes them up, and then actually seeing a demonstration of gender in action, I think that's much more useful than just reading a text on that. I think it supports the text. I judge it by the participation. If it starts to take too long, if the technology I'm using becomes the event rather than the subject I'm teaching, then it's failed in my view. I once tried to use balloons to demonstrate social capital. So I had different social capitals which had different values, and it just didn't work. I'm glad I tried it because I won't try it again. Don't let the artifact become the key issue. It's about letting the subject speak for itself. I do reflect on my practice. I do make notes about what worked, what doesn't work, what does work. But if it doesn't work, I think the best thing is to have a joke with the students. I think the other thing I'd like to say is we've got really privileged jobs, and I think we do take it really seriously. And I think the important thing for me is that what we do is about pedagogy. It's about teaching, and to me, I think pedagogy starts with thinking about what we do. So that's my approach really. I've got this really complicated message to get across to someone. How am I going to do that?